short presentation on homeopathy. And I thought the easiest thing I could do was to talk about myths and facts because recently, when I met the health minister of UK, because we have a clinic there in Harley Street, and he said, how can I help you? And I said, you can rationalize it and you can have better education system in UK. And he said, I wish I could do that, but yours is a controversial science. So I thought I'd put that to rest first. And I think if I'm able to push that across, I think that'll be a good day's work for me. I think the first myth that we come across is that homeopathy is just sugar pills or a placebo because all medicines look alike. And I'd like to say here that a lot of our kids actually call us candy doctors. And when they come to us, they're so happy because they don't get injections and they don't get shots. And it's such a happy place to go to a homeopath's clinic because you have all children, happily wanting to go there again and again, which you don't find in a general pediatric practice. So, yes, they do look like sugar pills, but let me explain to you that the sugar pills are only a vehicle. And they are sugar pills because they have lots of holes in them, and they absorb medicine, which is alcohol-based. It can also be water-based or aqueous-based. And for diabetic patients, we have special medicine, which is based in water and not in alcohol, because sometimes alcohol can increase the level of blood sugar in some patients who have advanced diabetes. So basically, this is only a mode of administering medicine. You can actually take one drop. I remember there was a very famous homeopath in Mumbai, who all that he used to do, he just used to put one drop of homeopathic medicine on the hand, in the web of the finger, and said, all right, now you go, your migraine is cured. And it actually used to happen because it can actually work through any orifice. In unconscious people, you can give a vaginal douche, you can put an eye drop, and it can still get absorbed into the system. So basically, the sugar pills are just a vehicle. And so it really doesn't matter how you dispense it. It's just that it's a sweet form and a nice way of taking medicine. The second thing is that homeopathy is slow in action. I think this is again a myth because a lot of people tend to think that it is slow because a lot of people who come for homeopathy come for chronic ailments. They come for a migraine which is 20 years old or a backache which is 10 years old, and they come for an allergy which is 15 years old. And there's a difference between suppression and cure. What modern medicine does is it actually suppresses. So when you take something, you take an antibiotic, your cold disappears, but your immunity actually comes down. So you think that you're all right, but actually in a little while again you fall sick. And this whole cycle keeps going on and on again. So it's perceived to be slow only because there is no elevation of sudden symptoms that you find in homeopathy, because most of the time it's a chronic problem that we are treating. Having said that, however, if you actually deal with an acute problem, you get very, very quick results. I'm saying you could cure an upset stomach, for example, in a day, in 24 hours, you could cure a cold which otherwise takes 7 days with medicine and a week without in actually 2 or 3 days. So it has its advantages and it has its very, very quick miracle cures as well. Homeopathy is based on faith is myth number 3, and it's simply not a science. This is again, like I said, it is a myth. I think everything in medicine is based on faith up to an extent. I think the moment you go to one doctor who's very well known, and when you go there, you actually go with the thought that you're going to heal yourself. So the healing process starts even before you visit a doctor. And this happens with any doctor. I'm saying it doesn't happen only with homeopathy. It also happens with any system of medicine. And you actually will yourself to be cured because I'm going to Dr. ABC, who's such a famous doctor. And when I go there, I know he's going to make me all right. So I think the body starts healing itself. So to some extent, yes, it is true that all systems of medicine work on faith up to a point. But let me say this, that the entire system of homeopathy is actually based on converts. Because homeopathy has come out of allopathy. Homeopathy is only 200 years old. It was founded by a German doctor who was an MD doctor. So it was founded by an allopathic doctor who then turned into homeopathy. Even today, all over Europe, the doctors who practice homeopathy are actually MD doctors who are MDs in modern medicine, and they then choose homeopathy as a specialization. So anybody who actually practices homeopathy, and because it's a very new science compared to anything else, it's actually practiced by most people who don't believe in it. And it's actually taken by a lot of people who don't believe in it. So lots of the people are actually converts. And I think the best example that I can give you on how it's not based on faith is its action on plants, and its action on animals, and its action on children. I think all of you will agree, any of you who've got kids, of how wonderful homeopathy is for acute problems in kids, tonsillitis, otitis media, bedwetting, and so on and so forth, how wonderfully it works. And kids, don't care where you're taking them, and they have no faith. It works on babies, for example. One of the best medicines that you can give is a little bit of natrum sulph and carbo-veg in homeopathy for, flatulent colic in kids. And that's a very, very common problem with babies. They actually cry their, heads out just because they've got some gas problem. And a little bit of homeopathy can actually help so wonderfully. Even things like breath-holding spasm in kids. It's one way of rebelling and saying, you're not giving me attention, so I'll cry myself till I'm blue. And homeopathy has wonderful medicines like carbo-veg, which actually help wonderfully for that. So basically, I would say it works wonderfully in infants who have no faith at all, because it's the doctor and the mothers and the parents who actually give that medicine to them. It works wonderfully in plants, and there's a huge study which is now being done all over the world, where homeopathy is being used to actually to grow produce and to make sure that plants are healthier, because it's a natural medicine. And the third thing I'd like to say is my experience on homeopathy with animals. My pet dog hides under the chair every time she sees my red bag and knows that I'm going to travel. And a simple homeopathic medicine like magnesium carb actually will set her right, because she'll stop eating, and once she takes that, she's back to normal. Because that is the medicine which is based on ailments coming from emotional separation. So homeopathy can actually help animals. We work in Menaka Gandhi's Animal Center in Delhi. We treat 900 dogs who are abandoned dogs, and also camel and cattle, and there are about 2,000 animals. We've trained 17 vets over there to use homeopathy in the practice. I'm happy to say that I've trained lots of veterinary doctors in UK, and today 50% of veterinary doctors in UK use homeopathy in their practice. So homeopathy actually works wonderfully for pets. And again, pets don't have any faith. Where's the question of faith in an animal? You just ask them to open your mouth, and they just swallow the sweet pills and they get all right, especially for things like skin problems, eczemas, warts, and so on and so forth. Also, it's actually now today there's a lot of scientific evidence for homeopathy, and I'm going to talk about that a little later. The fourth and the last myth that I'm going to talk to you about before I get on to facts is that homeopathy advises several diet restrictions. Actually, this is complete humbug. Homeopathy is the easiest form of medicine to take. It's actually Ayurveda which has diet restrictions which are strict, not homeopathy, and unfortunately, there's a confusion between the two. Hahnemann, who founded homeopathy more than 200 years ago, said that every man's stomach is like his foot. And he was the first person 200 years ago to actually advocate idiosyncrasies in diet and actually advocate specific diets for specific needs, and said that there's nothing like a universal diet. I may like cauliflower and you may like broccoli, and cauliflower may not suit you and broccoli may not suit me. There can be different reactions to different people to the same food. And I think this is something which the founder of homeopathy advocated more than 200 years ago. So basically, there are no restrictions in homeopathy except for medical restrictions. If you have a kidney problem, you take less salt. If you have high blood pressure, you take less salt. If you have diabetes, you don't take too much of sweet, and so on and so forth. The first fact is that homeopathy is neither Indian nor traditional. Unfortunately, in India, it's part of Ayush. Ayush is Ayurveda and, indigenous systems of medicines. Homeopathy is not an indigenous system of medicine. Because it's clubbed with Ayurveda, people think it's like Ayurveda. It's not. Like I said before, homeopathy was found by a German MD doctor called Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. And this was about 200 years ago. And it is not traditional because, again, it is the most modern of all medical sciences. People think it's old. Ayurveda is 2,000 years old. Homeopathy is only 200 years old. So it's one of the newest sciences on the block and the newest kids of the block. Fact number 2 is homeopathy is growing 3 times faster than allopathy. Now, this is also something which will come as a surprise to all of you. This is something all over the world. While the pharma industry is growing at 10%, homeopathy is growing at 30% for the last 5 years, back to back. The global market for homeopathy is estimated to be 26,000 crores. For the last 5 years, like I said, homeopathy is growing 30%. At present, according to World Health Organization, homeopathy is the second largest system of medicine in the world. It's not Ayurveda, it's homeopathy, or any other system of medicine. So after modern medicine, the largest system of medicine is homeopathy. France is the largest market for homeopathy in the world. And you'll be surprised that it's not India, but it's France. And this is because It's a leading country which uses homeopathic medicines, and 1/3 of the French population actually use homeopathy at some time or the other. The French government gives 35% subsidy on all homeopathic medicines in the country. And therefore, if you go to any pharmacy in France, you'll find one part of a pharmacy which has got allopathic medicines and another part of the same pharmacy which has got homeopathic medicines. And most of these are OTC products which are bought across the counter. So homeopathic medicines retail in more than 20,000 pharmacies across France. And this is why it's so popular there. If we come to UK, we know that it enjoys royal patronage. The Queen Mother, who expired recently, she lived more than 100 years old, was an arthritic, and she used to carry arnica and rustox wherever she went, any part of the world. She used to carry homeopathy kit. She was able to move because of that. She acknowledges that publicly. There are pharmacies, for example, Ainsworth or Nelson's in England on Duke Street, which actually have the Queen's insignia. So they have royal patronage. Prince Charles also is a great advocate of holistic medicine and homeopathy. So the royal family actually supports it very hugely. And what's important is that while in India, it is not part of the ESIS or the state employee scheme, in England, it's part of the national health scheme for the last many years. And therefore, the government in England actually spends 14 million pounds every year only on homeopathic treatment, which is subsidized. So you can go to a homeopathic doctor and the government will pay for your treatment. In 1994, which is some time back, an official study that was done showed that 45% of all British doctors would recommend their patients to homeopath. In Germany, where we actually believe that homeopathy was born, is not very popular. It's the third largest country. The reason for that is Hahnemann, who was born in Germany, actually settled and died in France, in Paris. So which is why it's more popular over there. The second reason is that it was very popular because it had very old age pharmaceutical companies like Medoc, which were very well known, over 100 years old, but they had to shut down because lead poisoning and carbon monoxide poisoning was found in plants because of the autobahns and the highways that were built across where these factories were. So they all had to be shut down. In US, it is estimated that 230,000 crores is spent on health therapies, including homeopathy, and the market is growing at 20% annually. So really, if you look at India again, the market is 2,758 crores. It's expected to grow to 5,878 crores. It's estimated that more than 10 crore people, 100 million people use homeopathy in India. And this figure is expected to reach to 160 million in the next 3 years. It's growing at 30% for the last 5 years. India has the largest number of homeopathic doctors in the world, and that is 500,000. It has more homeopathic doctors as compared to allopathic doctors. Allopathic doctors are 4 lakh, Indian homeopathic doctors are 5 lakhs. Every year, 20,000 new homeopaths pass out from a university. In India, there are 105 homeopathic colleges affiliated to universities, out of which 33 offer post-graduation courses of MDs with specific studies. There are 11,000 homeopathic hospital beds in the country. Why is it that homeopathy has actually become so popular? I think I'd just like to mention 2 points very quickly. The first is safety. I think there's a huge trend all over the world for people to understand and accept today that there's a new branch of medicine which is called iatrogenic disorders, which is drug disease disorders. And we now realize that so many diseases that we actually get are now caused by some form of drug interaction. And therefore, while everything in modern medicine has an action, it also has a reaction. And I think people are now fed up of the side effects of reactions. It's estimated that more than 300 people die every day in America alone because of a drug-related disorder. Now, this is equivalent to one Boeing crash. And if one Boeing crashed every day, you'll make world headlines. But nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about the side effects of modern medicine. Nobody talks about how many people die. People are not even aware that new drugs that are formulated today, after some time, they all become obsolete and they actually get banned because of the side effects. I mean, you can talk about Novalgin, you can talk about Actifed as brand names, which no longer exist, even though at one stage they were very, very commonly used, and today doctors advise that you don't use them at all. So one strong reason for the use of homeopathy is safety. And I think people are really fed up of the side effects of modern medicine, and which is why more and more people all over the world are turning to homeopathy. The second reason is cost effectiveness. I think today if you have to go to a hospital, you know what your medical bills are. And the whole cost of diagnostics pre-diagnostics, treatment, post-treatment charges are so high today in medical services and healthcare that very often in America as well, healthcare is such a huge government election issue. I mean, you can't win elections unless you have a good healthcare policy all over the world. And everywhere it's not really successful. It's not that American healthcare is doing great or the national health scheme in UK is actually working very well. So a lot of social schemes on health have actually failed all over the world. And there's a huge demand. It's not really necessary that the more money that you spend, you actually get more returns out of it. So I think that's a challenge, and homeopathy with its cost effectiveness is actually very useful. I just want to give you one example. In Andhra Pradesh 10 years ago, which is one of our states in India, in South India, we had a huge epidemic of Japanese encephalitis. There were fever, children were dying, and what the Andhra Pradesh government did was they used a simple homeopathic medicine called Belladonna 30. They gave 2 doses for 2 days as a preventive to all children in Belladonna. They distributed 1 million doses of Belladonna. It cost them 1 million rupees to do that. And after that, not one single child died or developed Japanese encephalitis. Now compare this to the present government, which has just used and sanctioned 4,000 crores for research and development for Japanese encephalitis for the children who are dying in UP and in Bihar. I mean, why could they not learn from past history? And why could they not follow an example of another state and just use that very easily and save so many costs and so many lives as well? So just to give you an idea, I think it's the cost effectiveness and it's the side effects of modern medication which actually are moving people towards a safer system of medicine. Fact number 3, and the last fact for me to tell you, is people believe that homeopathy is obsolete. They believe that in the last 200 years, there's not much of research that has been done. There are lots of R&D. There's enough double-blind trials that have been carried all over the world. I just want to give you an example. For example, to discover one drug molecule and one drug in allopathy, it takes about 10 to 15 years. It's cost a few $1 million. And it has a very, very limited time frame because after some time, the drug dies out. There's a new drug that comes in, a new molecule comes in, and so on and so forth. In homeopathy, in the last 200 years, more than 2,000 new drugs have been developed. And these are all absolutely new drugs with new symptoms, new therapeutic values, and so on and so forth, which means homeopathy has been developing 10 new drugs every year, which is almost 1 new drug every month, as compared to allopathy, which develops 1 new drug once in 10 years or 15 years. So that's the equation. And therefore, it's far better equipped to deal with epidemics, to deal with new diseases which keep coming up all over the world. A simple study on a drug called lycopodium conducted in Lucknow as part of a research study showed that it controlled blood pressure, was good for cardiovascular ailments, improved memory, reduced inflammations, provided 60% protection against alcohol-induced gastric ulcer. Like this, there are many studies which are done all over the world. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just to give an idea, for example, depression, which a lot of people think can't be treated, and today there are so many suicides. When I was working in Mauritius and we started a clinic over there, I was shocked to find the number of young children who committed suicide. And this was really because there was no high school after 5th standard. And if they didn't pass their exam in the 5th standard, they have to appear for a board exam in the 5th standard. Then they had no formal education after that. They had to be school dropouts and sit at home. I think it's a problem all over the world today. I mean, today every time you use a newspaper, you find somebody's taking a rope and hanging themselves from a fan, And I think it's so sad because people don't recognize depression today. A lot of it goes unrecognized. People don't treat it very well. They don't look at it as a social or a medical disorder. And you can see with research done with a double-blind trial, it showed 58% of patients suffering from major depression, social phobia, and panic disorders actually respond to homeopathic medicines very well. Similarly, for diabetes, a study done in Athens showed that if you take an oral anti-diabetic drug, it gave 47% relief. If you added homeopathy to it, it gave you 97% control. So there's a 50% higher control in type 2 diabetics, not in type 1 diabetics. It doesn't help over there at all. So insulin-dependent diabetics, it doesn't help. Similarly, in migraine, in rheumatoid arthritis, in insomnia, in chronic fatigue syndrome, which also a lot of people suffer today because we all pack so much in our lives today, and in allergies, eczemas, in hyperactivity, this is again a big problem with kids They have very small attention span. They can't sit in one place at all. Finally, I'd like to end with saying what I think should be the role of homeopathy in India and what is our vision. It should be adopted by the government as a system of medicine to reach very cost-effective rural healthcare. Urban India also needs homeopathy, and what we need is holistic healthcare. And because homeopathy offers safe, sensible, and cost-effective healthcare, I believe it is the medicine for the future. Finally, I'd like to end with this last line of saying that the objective of medical practitioners must not be to profit from disease. Ultimately, attitude towards medicine is defined by what we consider our goal. And therefore, do we want more doctors, more medicines, and more hospitals? Or do we want simply less disease? In my opinion, this is one case where less is definitely more. Thank you.